Pollock. Hi, I'm so glad to be here today. Happy birthday, Backwall. That's so exciting. Yay. What a joyous celebration. Thank you. Um, I have the honor of having worked with Connie in the program for about over 2 years now. She is walking integrity and discipline and everything through a higher power, according to her, for sure. No, but I mean that in the best of ways. She's just I don't think she understands how many people she's touched in the program. And when she shows up, she really shows up and she practices her principles and at least tries to in all of her affairs. And I think we're all going to have a really amazing experience listening to her story today. So, Connie, I'm going to call you up now. Yeah.
I'm Connie, I'm an alcoholic. Yeah, congratulations to, let's see, Devin, Dustin, George, and Justin. Oh my God, that's so exciting. Um, I don't know the others that well, but Justin, I met you on your first day and you just stole my heart. And I just could not be happier for you. And it's just such a gift that I can call you a friend today. Um, so yeah, I have a sobriety date. My sobriety date is January 9th, 2019. I have a sponsor. My sponsor has a sponsor. I sponsor other women. I have a service commitment. I've had a service commitment pretty much since I crawled in here because my sponsor said I had to get one. Um, and I say that because those are the things that kept me sober my first year. And those are the things that not only kept me sober, but saved my life. Um, Throughout these almost 5 years, but especially the last few months. And I'll tell you more about that. So I'm not going to go into a long drunkalog. I started drinking um, vodka out of 16-ounce water glasses when I was 13 years old. I stole it from my mom. I was a blackout drinker from the gate. I mean, I drank alcoholically from the gate. Um, and alcohol was just a magic potion for me. I am a fear-based creature and I have been afraid of everything as long as I can remember. I cannot remember a time going back when I was not afraid. I was that kid with the monsters under the bed. I had this fear of dying when I was really small. I was afraid of everything. My world consisted of a really dark, dangerous place, and there was a saber-tooth tiger around every corner. And so I lived in fight or flight mode my whole life. Um, and there were some very disturbing things going on in my house, but I don't think, I don't think looking back that that's why I was so afraid. I think I just came out of the womb afraid. Um, the book says that we are driven by 100 forms of fear, self-seeking, self-delusion, self-pity, and that's me. When I read that line, I was like, how does this guy know me? I was like that from a little kid. So I was a very weird little kid. I was not born in this country. English was not my first language. I didn't have a father. I didn't have any brothers and sisters, and I had a falling down alcoholic mother. So I spoke very broken English when I went to school, and I was teased. And my mother started showing up drunk and falling down several times, and it was rough. I didn't have any friends. I didn't want any friends. I certainly couldn't bring friends home. And by the time I was 13 years old, like I said, I discovered vodka in a water glass, and that's how my drinking started, and it just never stopped. I drank unapologetically as much as I could, as fast as I could, um, because what alcohol does for me is it gets me off the planet. And when I'm off the planet, I'm not afraid. I don't care. I'm just off the planet. And all that fear and all that fight or flight goes away. It's just absolutely magic for me. Um, So I started enhancing my alcohol use with a lot of outside issues. I'm not going to go into a lot of that. A lot of us in this room have had that same experience. And I did that pretty successfully for about 45 years. No one, I've never been married. I've never been in a really long-term relationship. I do have one son. My son's father was a heroin addict. I can't really describe it as a relationship because he was in and out of prison most of the time. But there were some very dark periods during that relationship. When my son was 4 years old, we were living in a storage shed, basically, no running water, no toilet. And the police showed up and took my 4-year-old kicking and screaming out of my arms, took him to foster care. I spent a year trying to get custody of him. Um, one of the benefits of that was that I had to stop using outside issues because they were testing me. They never asked me about alcohol, so of course I kept drinking. Um, I dragged that child through hell. I mean, I stole his childhood. We were homeless several times. We lived in a tent at one point. Um, it was a really, really dark way to live, and it was a disturbing childhood for him. But because of that intervention by Child Protective Services, things did get a little better, but I never stopped drinking. I can't honestly tell you I have drawn a sober breath prior to coming to Alcoholics Anonymous for 20 years. I drank successfully. I maintained good jobs for a very long time, and my my son started having a lot of problems and getting arrested and not going to school. And I used that as an excuse to start drinking, at work around the clock. Um, and things got really bad with us. He ended up going to a place called Pine Hills. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but it's basically a prison for kids. And like I said, I just started drinking around the clock. Um, what ended up happening was I had a pretty good job. I was working at the hospital. I had started using outside issues again, prescribed to me by a doctor, but I couldn't get enough of them. I was stealing them from the hospital I worked at, and I was drinking a bottle of booze before I went to work. And one night, the manager called me into the office and said that someone had accused me of stealing some narcotics. And of course, I denied it. I had one of those flasks, coffee flasks full of booze. Um, and I had no business being on the premises. And long story short, they escorted me off the premises. I lost my job. Um, they asked me not to return onto the premises. And about 3 days later, the DEA showed up at my house. Um, and I was, I can't even tell you what happened during that conversation, but it was ugly. Um, and basically, I told them that, I was going to kill myself and it didn't matter if they wanted to arrest me. And I didn't give a shit anymore. And I spent the next 4.5 months, they did not arrest me, but I spent the next 4.5 months actively trying to drink myself to death. That was the best plan that I could come up with. Prior to this, um, my prior to this, I had a granddaughter. My son had a child. I was not allowed to see my granddaughter for the first year of her life because of my drinking. My son and I had no relationship at all. We could not be in the same room together. It was just so hostile, so toxic. It was just awful. So anyway, I proceeded to drink around the clock. I would get up in the morning, 8 o'clock, I'd be at the liquor store. I'd buy my 3 bottles. And I did that in the hope that I wouldn't have to go back. Some days it worked, some days it didn't. Most of the time it was, 4 a.m. And I can't get drunk anymore. I'm legless. I'm drinking so much. I'm not eating. I'm legless. I'm falling down the stairs. I wake up with a black eye, with a split lip. I have no idea what's happened, but I can't shut this off anymore. Bill talks about the four horsemen: terror, frustration, bewilderment, and despair. And I'll tell you what, guys, I was lit. They were at the table with me every day, and I couldn't drink enough. It just stopped working, but I couldn't not drink. Um, so one night I come to on the floor. By now I peed in the bed so many times that I'm sleeping on the floor. And I come to and I am in a fetal position and I am in more pain than I've ever been in my entire life. And I crawl to the bathroom and I start vomiting blood. And I'm talking buckets of blood. I'm talking like just horrendous. And this goes on for quite a while. For some reason, my son had come home, and I don't remember, but he had come home during this couple of days, and he sees this. I think this was the last time he had found me passed out. He like had to step over me as he opened the door, and I'm passed out on the floor. And that night at 2 a.m, I start vomiting blood, and he leaves. And and when I pull my head out of the toilet, my only thought is, how am I going to get to the liquor store? That was my only thought. And I'll tell you today what I believe what happened to me in that moment was, I knew I was beyond human aid. I knew it. I couldn't have told you that in those words, but that was my what happened moment. I knew that I was absolutely, completely beyond human aid. Anyway, long story, I ended up outside. My neighbors found me, took me to the ER. I spent 6 days in the ICU. I was not supposed to survive. I had a GI bleed. I had an esophageal bleed. I had a bacterial infection that ate a third of my stomach lining, and I was bleeding to death. But for the grace of God, I didn't. And one more time, I ended up in the psychiatric unit. And here's where the story starts to get really good. So I end up in the psychiatric unit. I had been there over this 4.5 months. I had been there 3 times. I was there for 3 weeks this time, and I got out of that psychiatric unit on Christmas Eve 5 years ago. But here's the amazing thing, and this is why I was so honored when Crystal asked me to speak today, because when they let me out on Christmas Eve 5 years ago, there was no one to call. No one. The last thing that my only child said to me was, I wish you'd hurry up and fucking die. And he meant it. He meant it. And today, I understand. And as I look around this room, 5 years later, like, I don't know every single one of you, but I have most of your phone numbers. Some of you are my close friends, or my sponsees are here. It is just unbelievable to me. It is astonishing to me what God can do. All I have to do is let him, and that's where I struggle. But anyway, so needless to say, I'd love to tell you I stayed sober out of that psych unit. I did not. I was drinking in the cab on the way home, because I have no tools. I have nothing. I know how to drink, and everything in the world to me looks like I need a drink. Everything, good, bad, indifferent, light, dark, doesn't matter. I need a drink. So I was drinking in the cab on the way home, back to the emergency room. Again, it is astonishing what God can do. I go to the emergency room, and they send me a social worker, and she says they have a bed for you at RCM tomorrow. And that's what I needed. If I had gone home, I would have been right back on this roller coaster, this, gates of insanity and death. So I got into RCM. Um, for the very first time in my life, I did something that someone else told me to do. They told me to get a sponsor, and they told me to go to a meeting when I got out of treatment. And they took us to meetings, obviously. They brought us here, um, and I did that. And I don't know why. To this day, I can't tell you why. It wasn't my idea. Because I have a lot of really good ideas, and, I've pretty much just told you how well they turn out for me. Um, but for the first time in my life, I took someone else's advice, and I went to a meeting the night I got out of treatment. And I actually met a woman who became my first sponsor in that treatment program. And I didn't know what a sponsor was, I didn't know anything. But I was, like I said, I was beyond human aid. And on some cellular level, I knew that. The book talks about to be doomed to die of alcoholism or live life based on spiritual principles. Well, I didn't know a spiritual principle if it bit me in the ass, but I knew what dying of alcoholism looked like because I almost did. And I'll tell you what, guys, it is horrific. It's slow and painful, and it's awful. It's awful. So I knew I had to do something else. So I got a sponsor. My sponsor had certain conditions, certain number of meetings I had to go to, a service commitment. I had to call her every day for a very long time, which was completely weird to me. But and then she made me call other women, and that was even stranger. I'm like, what do I say to these people? She goes, oh, honey, don't worry. They'll know why you're calling. You just tell them your sponsor told you to. One of the women I called is in this room today. That's so cool. And I'm a fear-based creature, right? Now I don't have alcohol, and there's nobody. I mean, I don't know how to do anything sober. Nothing. I don't know how to go to work sober. I don't know how to brush my teeth. I don't know how to wash I mean, I'm completely like, I'm just in a free fall of fear. I don't know how to do anything. So thank God for sponsorship. Because my sponsor walked me through all of that. I would call her, I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. I want to drink. She'd say, wash one dish. Just wash one dish. And some days that was the best I could do. And in between meetings, and she said, go to a lot of meetings, and I wasn't working in the beginning, and I did. I probably went to 5 meetings a day, and I wanted to drink, and I hated being sober. And I would hold a book in my hands because I figured if I'm holding a book, I'm not going to drink. And I did that for a long time. And at 45 days sober, the obsession with drink was lifted. It was just gone. And I attribute that directly to a power greater than myself because my sponsor told me to get on my knees and to ask God for help. And I said, I don't think I believe in God. And she said, that's okay. He believes in you. And that changed everything for me. I mean, I was still like closing the curtains and, I live by myself and I'm praying in the corner because I don't want anybody to know. I live by myself and I'm hiding booze all around the house. Like, who does that? Like, what? I don't know what that was. Couple years in, I had plumbing issues under my kitchen sink, and I pull out this bottle and it says vodka, and I'm like, and there's like, a dozen empty vodka bottles. I'm like, where did this come from? Yeah, so, and the insanity of my alcoholism includes like really crazy shit. I mean, crazy shit. And I did a lot of it when I was drinking too. I'd like to tell you that I had a lot of fun and I had a lot of adventures. And a couple of years ago, I would have told you that, but I did things that were so dangerous, so crazy. I traveled for business for many years. And I would go to an airport and God forbid there was a layover or the flight was canceled or delayed because I'm at the bar. And several times I would go and end up in another country with no way to get home. I worked for lawyers and luckily they were always able to to route something through immigration to get me home. But that's the kind of stupid shit I did. You know, I remember being on a train in Europe and I come out of a blackout and the last thing I remember, I was in Germany and I come out of this blackout and there are these 5, 6 guys around me. I don't know what language they're speaking. I don't know what country I'm in. I mean, the stuff I used to do was just, I mean, just inconceivable that I even survived. And that's what my drinking looks like. You know, it's dangerous, it's dark, um, it's really unattractive in a lot of ways. So my sponsor takes me through this book, and I want to talk about the steps just a little bit. Um, my sponsor takes me through the book, and how we do it is we read the book line by line, word by word. We define things, and it takes a minute. And you know, I am, like I said, I am so full of ideas. I know everything. I have all the answers. Um, you know, I just got out of treatment. I just got out of the hospital drinking myself to death, and I know everything. Well, she was really tough, and she made it very clear to me that this is what I know. She made that really clear. This is what you know. Now, she's 27. I'm 59 when I got here. So I had some humility. I didn't know I had any, but I had some humility. And like I said, I knew I was dying. So she tells me, we read the book, we get into the steps. And of course, my question is, well, you know, I came here to stop drinking myself to death. I don't, this God stuff, this spiritual awakening stuff, all that stuff. I don't, you know, I don't know. I don't know what that's all about. I just want to stop drinking myself to death. So the book says that I have a spiritual malady and that the only cure for my spiritual malady is a spiritual experience, a spiritual awakening. And so I look at step 12 and I go, oh, well, there it is. If I want a cure for the spiritual malady, I got to have a spiritual awakening, which means I got to work the steps. So I just want to like take one, I have one favorite word in all of the steps. I don't think I need to use my book because I can actually read that. So step one, you know, I worked step one out there a million times. I mean, a million times. The difference was by the time I crawled into these rooms, my life was no longer unmanageable. It was unbearable. My life was unbearable. Like I said, I couldn't drink enough to shut this off. I couldn't get off the planet anymore. My favorite word, of course, now is we. You know, that is the magic. That has become the magic for me, especially over these last couple of months. You know, I worked step one a million times out there. I didn't know if I had alcoholism. I didn't know. I thought I was batshit crazy, but there was no we. There was nobody. You know, I had a million doctors, psychiatrists tell me, you have got to stop drinking or you're going to die. And I was always like waiting, like, okay, and now you're going to tell me how to do that. Because I can't. I can't. I am going to be drinking in the cab on the way home. So we is the magic. We stay sober. I get drunk. Without you guys, I'm dead. Step two. And step one is all about hopelessness and desperation. And I am so grateful that I was given the gift of desperation, that this was the last house on the block. There was nowhere else for me to go. Nowhere else. Thank God. Step two came to believe that. That's what sold me on this God idea. It doesn't say came to believe in, it says that there is a power greater than me that I get to pick out. You guys aren't telling me what it is. I get to choose. And I don't have to believe in anything. I just get to believe that there is something. And, you know, my line I stole from Chuck Chamberlain, you know, there had better be a power greater than myself or else I'm screwed. I'm screwed, you guys, if there isn't. because my whole life, the way I'm running it, is a train wreck. It's a train wreck. So, man, I hope there is a power greater than me when I start on step 2. And then 3, made a decision to turn our lives over to the care of God, as I understood him, the care. That's what I have wanted my whole life. Something to care for me. So I'm not burning my life to the ground every time I turn around. Because I don't know how to take care of me, you guys. I don't. I mean, I still have days where I don't know how to take care of me. So I love that. And step 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory. Well, for me, the key is made. I have to do it. I have to put it on paper. You know, in my first 4 step, I don't know how searching and fearless it was. It was the best I could do. The best I could do. But I did it. I put it on paper. Step 5, admitted. Admitted. I have to take ownership of that stuff. I don't have to, you know, run around and tell the world or announce it, but I have to take ownership of it. Step 6, entirely ready, you know, and that's has been a process for me. Step 6 and 7, 7 is humbly, because for me, so step 6 and 7, the first time I did them, we do them together in my sponsorship line. I called my sponsor and I said, it's not working. I'm doing something wrong. What's happening? Well, what I was doing was, I was demanding that God remove your character defects because they were really bugging me. They were really bothering me. So it's been a real process for me to understand 6 and 7 through practice of prayer and meditation and daily, you know, daily practice. And for me, what they are today is a form of spiritual surgery. You know, what's really happening, and the 12 and 12 goes into this in a lot more detail, but what really happens in 6 and 7 is I am surrendering the management of my entire life to a power greater than myself, not just my drinking. Because I think I have a drinking problem. I don't have a drinking problem. I drink really well, you guys. I have a sober. I can't do life sober. So I need a power greater than myself that I can give the care of me over to and the management of me over to. And I do that every morning. Okay, God, it's yours. Management of my whole life, it's yours. Everything. But like I said, it's been a process for me because I really didn't understand why God wasn't removing your character defects. And 8, for me, for 8, it's became willing. It's willingness. It's all about willingness. If I am not willing to write down every person that I have harmed, and it doesn't mean I'm willing to make an amends to them in that moment. It means I'm willing to acknowledge the actual harm, the spiritual harm that I did just by making that list. And it's not easy. It's a tough one. So 9 made direct amends. For me, in that step, it's wherever. It doesn't say whenever. And it doesn't say I run around and start telling people I'm sorry. A lot of the people I had huge amends to are dead. And I remember telling my sponsor, well, I can't do this step. I'm never gonna, you know, succeed. Or she said, no, honey, that's not the point. Number one, she said, you can make amends to God. And I've had to make a lot of amends to God because the wherever possible just has not been possible yet. And it's up to God whether that ever happens. But I did make amends to the people in my life who've died through letters. It's part of the part of our process is we write letters before we make amends. So I was able to do that. And then the interesting thing about step 9 for me has been how, again, how God just kind of drops people in my life when the time is right to make the amends, because I've done the footwork, because I've done the letter. I know what the actual harm is. Now I know what the spiritual harm is. And when that person drops in my life, I just say it. I just say it. Done. Um, the hardest, but the most powerful one of those was to my son. It took 3 years. He didn't want to hear it. But he finally was willing to listen for a few minutes. And when I said to him, is there anything I've left out or anything I've forgotten? He just looked at me and he goes, oh, Mom, there's so much. And I'll tell you what, it was beautiful because that connection right there, when he said those words to me, opened up a relationship for us. Just that moment, those words. And I never saw that coming. I never saw that coming. Never saw that coming. 10 continued. You know, I get a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. I get a daily reprieve from drinking and using. I get a daily reprieve from the bondage of me. This. It's all about me. I mean, I am the most selfish person on the planet, I think. You know, I don't wake up thinking about you guys. I wake up thinking about me. You know, Bill says in the book, our constant thoughts must be of others. I'm like, what? What? My constant thoughts are of me. So yeah, so I get a daily reprieve from the bondage of me by working my 10 step. And I don't like it, you guys. Oh man, I kicked and screamed against this step. You know why? Because I knew it was going to be a form of restraint. And I don't like restraint. I don't like it. And I don't like to be accountable. And I don't want to have to tell people that I screwed up, but I do today. And I screw up a lot less because of the 10-step inventory. And I go over it with my sponsor. Every year it gets shorter and shorter and shorter. I mean, it's an incredible tool. And new things come up all the time, but I get to work on those as they come up. 10 and 11, we also do together. 10 and 11 are just a circle for me. And I do them every morning. 11, the magic word for me is sought, because I'm not here to get anything or find anything. I'm seeking. And every morning, I have a meditation practice where I am seeking conscious contact with something other than my head, something other than me. And the funny thing about that is probably the best thing I took away from treatment. When I was in treatment, they made us do a yoga and a mindfulness class. And it was horrible. And they wanted to throw me out because I couldn't sit still. I mean, really, they were like, get this woman out of here. It's driving the rest of us crazy. And I remember running to the nurse. They hate me. They want me out. Give me a note. Get me out. She's like, go back in there. But someone told me, they told me the magic words. You know, what he said to me, he said, this mindfulness meditation practice is designed for people with brains like ours. And I went, oh, of course. You know, people who are like Buddha on the mountain, they don't need meditation. They're there. Well, you know, I'm not there. I need it every day. So what I took out of that treatment was I have been doing that for almost 5 years every day, because it's the only way that I can quiet my mind and my spirit before I go out the door. And I have to do it. And it has become a lifesaver. I'm so grateful that I learned to do that because it has saved my life. And then 12, you know, having had a spiritual awakening as the result. That's it. This is the result. It's not, there's no end, there's no finish line, there's no like trophy. What happens is, as the result of the steps, I get a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience, which is an internal rearrangement and displacement of old ideas and attitudes, right? Well, that treats my alcoholism, every aspect of it. Every aspect of my alcoholism treats my selfishness, treats my self-centeredness, my fear, my I want, I want, I want. Gimme, gimme, gimme. Treats all of that. Why? Because it's not me doing it. It's something bigger than me. I'm not running anything anymore. I mean, I'm not. To the best of my ability, I give it all to God. Let me tell you briefly how these steps have worked in my life. About 2 years sober. So I had hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical bills because of that ICU and some other things that happened. So about 2 years sober, they garnished my wages. And I don't know, I was probably making $10 an hour, right? So I panic, of course. I call my sponsor. And she, I don't ever expect my sponsor to have magic solutions. The magic solution that she does have is give it to God. And, at 2 years sober, that's tough for me. I always think I know better than God. So I start micromanaging this, right? Because I can't pay my rent. I can't pay they're taking 25% of my income. I can't survive. So I start working 100 hours a week, thinking that's going to work. Well, now they're taking 25% of 100 hours a week, and that's not working. So I go the other way. I start working 20 hours a week, thinking they won't take anything. Well, none of this works. And I do this for a while, and every other day, I swear to you, I'm calling my sponsor and I'm going, Jessica, I'm drowning. I'm drowning. I don't know what to do. I am drowning. And she goes, yes, honey, I know you are. You just have to let go. Just give it to God. So I'm on my knees. I'm doing my daily prayer and meditation. And one morning I wake up and the fear is gone. It's just gone. I mean, it's just gone. I am no longer afraid, and it has not come back. I have no fear of financial insecurity today. I have lots of financial insecurity, but I have no fear around it. About a month after that, the Montana Department of Revenue says I owe them $5,000. So these things just started, they kept hitting me, and I just had to keep giving them to God, give them to God, give them to God. And not, you guys have heard me say this, many of you, I get a death grip on stuff. I mean, like, I don't leave claw marks, I leave claws behind. And when I really 6 and 7, surrender on a spiritual level, nothing changes until I do that. Nothing. So that happened with the financial stuff. So about 3 months ago, I don't want to overshare here. This is tricky. So about 3 months ago, my son, he moved back in with me during COVID. And our relationship is not like ideal, but we have a relationship today. And it is only because of Alcoholics Anonymous and good sponsorship and you guys. So about 3 months ago, he became really mentally ill. And it came out of the blue, and he burned his life to the ground. And because he was living in my home, and it really set my life on fire as well. And it was the most difficult, most painful thing I have ever gone through, ever. Certainly sober. I had to, not only did I have to support I had to support the county attorney in trying to get him committed to the state mental hospital. And then he had a commitment hearing, which they did not commit him to the state mental hospital, but because of some things that happened in our home prior to this, I had to go to the police department and get a a trespass order taken out against him. And so it's winter and he can't come home and he's mentally ill and he has nowhere to go and he has no job and no money and no car and nothing. And he can't come home. It's really hard. So I held on to it with my death grip, like I do, because my ego thinks it knows better than God. And I thought I knew what this kid needed, and I thought I knew what I needed. And I thought I knew what the judge needed to do, and I thought I knew what the doctor, and I was wrong about all of it. I was completely wrong. All I had to do was let go. That's all I had to do was give that kid back to God. You know, my sponsor always tells me it's not your child, it's God's child. And he is. And again, you know, I struggled with it. It was a really bloody cat fight, teeth and claws and blood and fur. And, but I started doing, you know, 6 and 7 again. And same thing. One morning, I woke up and the fear was gone. It was just gone. It was just removed. Now, was I still concerned that he's out there homeless? Yes, of course. But the fear was gone. And so what has ended up happening is I reached out. He was out there bouncing around for a while and it was just bad. It was just really bad. So I reached out to someone in the fellowship and I said, look, here's the situation. He's applied for a bed in a residential program, but they don't have a bed. Can you, you know, take him in for a few days? And they said, of course, bring him over. And that morning I took him over. That was almost a month ago. He's still waiting on a bed, but he's still with those people from the fellowship. He went to his first AA meeting. Sent me a picture of his 24-hour coin. Annie, some of you know Annie, she sends me a text the other night. I'm at the senior center playing bingo with your son. I'm like, you what? I mean, again, it is astonishing what God can do if I just get my hands off. That's all I had to do. I didn't know what this kid needed. I had no clue. But see, I think I know everything. And this is how God shows me, sometimes with a real swift kick in the ass, that, you know what? I don't know anything. I don't know anything. But I know how to let go today. I know how to let go. Now, I did not walk through that with total dignity and grace, but you know what? I wanted to drink or swallow a handful of pills more than I have since the day I walked in here. And I came to you guys and I shared that. And oh my God, people like just carried me through it. Carried me through it because I was honest and I was vulnerable. And it's okay, you know, even at almost 5 years sober, to say, you know what, I am thinking about drinking or swallowing a handful of pills. And I told that to everyone. You know, I didn't do it. Like I said, I don't know how much dignity and grace I walked through it with, but I did not drink and I did not swallow a handful of pills. And I wanted to. You know, watching your child suffer, I'd rather have my skin peeled off and to be so helpless. I mean, completely helpless. Completely helpless. And then to have to put him out on the street, you know, there is no way I could have done that without my sponsor, without this book, without the steps, without every single one of you. There's no way. You know, this program is such a miracle. It's such a miracle. You know, God could and would if he were sought. And, you know, I am learning to just let God demonstrate what God can do. And that's all I've got. Thanks. Ooh.
Thank you, Connie. That was wonderful. So thorough and just courageous. I mean, just courage.